Texas, I mean, finding a way to win on the road, I'll give them credit there. Uh, Diego Pavia putting in work there. Vanderbilt defense, I think, is kind of what kept them in this game. And a home crowd that was mostly Texas fans,
Weekend trip to Nashville.
but still, I mean, Vanderbilt, they've either won or lost by a field goal in every SEC game this season. They're not the you can't mess around with them. You can't do it. Texas kind of played with their food a little bit.
No, if credit to Vanderbilt for coming back and fighting that football game. They had a couple turnovers of their own that could have changed maybe the outcome or maybe especially the fourth quarter of that game. Yeah, I mean, for Texas, it was a bounce back win, right? And so I talked about it earlier. I guess it rings true here too. Like, yes, it is concerning a little bit how your offensive line played, right? How maybe you weren't crazy explosive, how there's still turnovers going on, and how you didn't put away Vanderbilt. But after a tough loss, an emotional loss against Georgia, you kind of regroup and you get a win. That's big, and they still have everything in front of them remaining, especially with who they play on their schedule. They get a bye week, and then they get into November and a couple of tough games there. Yeah, for Vanderbilt, man. I mean, they didn't have it, but they were right there, man. They were right there. It's fun. They're going to give a lot of teams problems. We said that after the Bama game. That has rang true all throughout. They got a couple very winnable games on their schedule left over and a couple losable games for sure. And they're one win away from bowl eligibility. And I hope so bad, man, they can get there because that would be awesome. What a bounce up, right? Like just a rebound for this program here. And it was a top 25 matchup in Nashville. We haven't seen that in a long, long time. Holy cow. Tough loss for sure. But listen, you were 17, 18-point dogs and you lost by 3. And you had, what, 2 turnovers and a couple turnovers on downs. Like it wasn't a bad game. You just played a really good football team, a really talented football team, and you lost by 3. Is it
Yeah.
concerning for Texas, though? Like, does this obviously it didn't alleviate any of your concerns, but does it add to it? Does it make you a little bit more concerned with how Texas is playing right now and maybe vulnerabilities that they do have offensively or defensively that you didn't quite see earlier in the season?
Well, I mean, finding production from other places in that skill position room, I think, is a big deal. But I still am worried if I'm Texas, right? I'm still worried about that offensive line, the way that they played against Georgia. I know it was Georgia, but still think about some of the matchups later on down the road this season that you're going to be playing some really physical defensive lines. I'm also worried about, and I don't know if I'm the only person saying this, but I'm slightly concerned about that wide receiver group. Like more so than I think your average person is. It's not as elite as we've seen it before, right? They're not creating elite separation all the time. I think it's really nice that they found Wisner as an option out of the backfield. I think Gunnar Helm coming out of that tight end spot is kind of a big deal. I think the emergence of those two, I think, alleviates the pressure that these wide receivers have. But am I crazy to think that these wide receivers have been a little bit underwhelming this season?
Not at all. I mean, it was no Isaiah Bonds. That obviously factors in there, but Gunnar Helm is your best receiver, like your best weapon, right? Your most productive right now. I know DeAndre Moore had the 2 touchdowns, but in terms of consistent production, that's not where you thought you were going to be if you're Texas. None of the transfers have really taken the quote unquote bull by the horns in that wide receiver room for Texas. And that's for sure concerning because if your offensive line is struggling against these elite defensive lines, you want to be able to get quick separation. You want to be able to let Sark and Quinn Ewers operate and scheme open big plays for you or get win early in these downs, in passing downs especially, or big time run out to catch stuff. Yes, you can beat Vanderbilt. You can probably beat Arkansas and Kentucky and Florida as well. But to win in late November and December and January like they want to do, like they think they can, it's going to have to be better. And maybe the health and the emergence of the health of Isaiah Bond changes that. But we also saw it with Isaiah Bond, and we did see some concerns there. And we've talked about it in terms of if they don't hit on their transfers and they're solid football players, but they're not elite, this could be a room of concern. And Quinn Ewers is not a guy that is transcendent enough at the position to make up for that. He is a guy that's going to be field general, surgical. When he has time in a clean pocket to hit open receivers, he will put it on the dot. But if you're playing elite teams with little separation, with tough pass rushes, he's not a guy that can make up for that and elevate the rest of the team by himself. He needs help around him. We saw it last year. He had that help. He had the O-line. He had the skill players. He had Coach Sark. Right now, they don't really have that, and that's leading to some turnovers and inconsistencies offensively. It's a great point you brought up.